I mean, some people, they generally want to understand. They have questions because they have questions, but a lot of times people are questioning, and they just all of a sudden go into this like critical, hyper divisive, tearing down the pastors and just all this kind of stuff. And as sad as it is, honestly, I think some of it is just that a hit dog will holler. Like you've been talking about money, and the Spirit of God is convicting them, and they're not going to do what the Spirit's telling them to do, so this is your fault. The second group of people are those who, and this is the way I've come to say it, man, they feel icky about the things that you feel excited about. And whenever that happens, it's just going to be a short road. It's just, there's just ministry misalignment. Man, when the church is getting fired up and actually being called to give to the thing that we get excited about, but they actually feel icky about, man, it just makes it really hard for them to hang.
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Breaking Barriers podcast. Today we are in part 2 of a podcast that myself, Pastor Bobby, and Pastor Andrew are doing. And we're talking about generosity initiatives. And today in part 2, we're going to talk about some of the just difficulties that come with that. The challenges that come personally, and then also the challenges of, man, when you really lay a clear vision out, some people are just going to have difficulty with that, and there's just some challenges with that. So we want to go into stuff like this eyes wide open, and we want to share with you guys some stuff that we've learned.
All right, third thing, generosity initiatives take a toll. Mm-hmm. And we can both talk about this. We can both talk about it very intimately, I think. But so generosity initiatives are discipleship initiatives. Generosity initiatives are strategic. Number 3, generosity initiatives take their toll. This is really true for all the staff. And I think... I'm actually, Let me throw this to you, because what I want to do with this section is talk a lot about the toll it takes on the senior communicator. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to understand that you can't just bolt a real discipleship initiative onto your life and keep your rhythms all the same. That's where I want to get. You got anything that would come out when I just think about, but it's true really for the entire staff. There's a strain, there's a pressure. There's just a straight up workload that you're going to kind of dump on everybody when you end up walking through one of these discipleship initiatives. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, in some ways, the essence of what you're doing is you're in some ways trying to pull generosity from the future and kind of bring it into today. And I think whenever we do anything like that in our life, whether it's, get fit or do, you're trying to use this future energy and you're trying to pull it into today. So it's not something that can just be bolted onto your schedule, because you don't just snap your fingers and people are kind of discipled into generosity, and, you have to invest a lot of energy into that. And there's scaled ways that you do this through sermons and through larger groups of people, but there are a lot of like individual one-on-one 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour conversations on top of all the planning that goes into something like this. Right. You have to spend months and months to plan something like this, because if you don't, people are probably going to hear what it is that you want to do, and they're probably just going to be like, man, they don't have their stuff together here. Yeah. It's going to be a good way to demonstrate, man, you guys aren't very wise. You've not thought through this. People may disagree with you, but you don't want people to think, man, they haven't even put the energy in to actually like think through this stuff.
So just to put some flesh on that, like using our own example. So we started with the offsite executive team, dream, and we'd been thinking about it for probably 2 months. Mm-hmm. We already had some verses, some things like that we were going to anchor around. But the first time we ever started really putting pen to paper with this stuff in a real serious way was in January for an initiative that public phase wouldn't kick off until October, and we were behind.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, we weren't drastically behind, but we were behind.
Yep.
So to your point, it ain't even just like a couple of months ahead. I mean, it's like a year.
Right. Yeah, and so when I say like energy from the future, all of a sudden, especially for the higher level staff, I mean, I would say my job probably became 50% around the generosity initiative, especially at the beginning. And so it's like, okay, like, what do you, like, you either have to take some of your schedule and remove it from your schedule so that you can add it to your schedule, or what a lot of guys end up doing, and you kind of end up flirting with burnout. You kind of just steal energy from the future, because you kind of try to do what you normally do, and then you try to bolt something like this on it. And you and I did a lot of that probably, and that's very hard because you only have so much energy. Right. And your whole system and body, God made us to rest. Like it will kind of get back to an equilibrium if you don't make some space for something like that.
And I think to your point, just to highlight how, when I say, remember, this is number 3, generosity initiatives will take their toll, to highlight the point that you're making. Yes, I know you did too. I ended up borrowing a lot of energy from the future, but we weren't trying to be like bullheaded. I mean, we had like our directional elders like looking at my schedule and, hey, we're taking this preaching rep off and we're not doing this and you're not doing staff prayer anymore. And so what's funny to me that I think makes the point even more is it's not like we were trying to be Superman. We were coming in with a posture of I was coming in with a posture of trying not to do that. Mm-hmm. And it happened anyway, so it's like, if you can, my point is you got to be really vigilant. So to not end up just getting smacked with this. And so you can't bolt it on to your normal life. You have to move things around. I'll just give you a little bit of a snapshot. You already did this a little bit, but for any senior communicator that walks through like a true, you hire Generis or something and you're going to walk through a 2-year deal with them, you're going to end up, the second you contract with them, you're just adding a couple hours worth of meetings to your week every single week. You're going to end up going through a full season, a couple months worth of generosity retreats, weekends, where you're going to preach Friday night, Saturday morning to one group of people. They leave. You just take 2 hours off. The next group comes in. You're going to do Saturday night, Sunday morning. You've probably already preached on Thursday for the church, so they're going to run that back on a recording maybe or something like that. So it's just a heavy, heavy preaching load. Every one of those people that come to those retreats is going to get a one-on-one. And if you're the senior communicator, you're going to end up having the lion's share of that stuff. So, you're going to end up with 30, 40, 50 meetings that are one-on-one on your back porch. Then you're going to end up having a ton of nights, just nights. Everything's a night. I mean, a vision night, a commitment night, a prayer night, and every one of those, you are the feature. Mm-hmm. You are like the main show for the whole thing. So it's, you're gonna be just putting a lot out with that kind of stuff, and that's all before the tremendous burden that it is to preach a huge vision for the public face. I would say that the amount of energy it takes to preach one of these sermons is 2 or 3 times a normal energy level, and the reason is because it just takes something out of you to stand before people and to call them to something as hard as you're calling them to be as vulnerable as you need to be. And to talk about the vision and keep all that stuff straight in your head, it just is a lot. And you're going to do that for 5 or 6 weeks back to back to back, like your life depends on it. I mean, I'm just trying to make the point of it's a lot. So you have to see it coming. Jesus said in Matthew 16:3, you look up and you see the sky's red, a storm's coming. It's like, you don't want to be the guy who gets caught out in the rain without realizing the storm is coming. At least take my advice, take your advice. Part of, I think, Proverbs 10:25, part of the righteous being able to stand in the whirlwind is knowing that it was coming and being able to brace for it. And so I think if you're thinking about an initiative, you need to be able to get ready for it.
Yeah, and I would say to add to that, it's a ton of work for the lead pastor, for the other senior staff. Most of the staff will have meetings with people that are talking about this stuff. It feels more pressure, whether that's right or not.
Right.
How you feel about it is actually not going to affect anything, but it just feels more pressure. Mm-hmm. But I would say, I know a lot of guys that have been in the church world for a while. They know a lot of what you're saying, and that's the exact reason that they kind of choose not to do it. Because right. they kind of count some of that cost, and they're just like, I'm just not sure it's worth it. I would just say, from like a strategy perspective, I think it's one of the most strategic things that you could do, and that's why that point was there earlier. And so if someone just needs to remove other stuff from their schedule, or they need help with removing something from their schedule, that may be a better play than just saying, I'm not going to. Because I've just talked with guys where once they start understanding what it is they're going to have to do, it's like, man, I'm just not willing to do that. I don't know if you'd speak to that a little bit even before we go on to the next point.
Yeah, I think that you're going to have two different types of leaders. You're going to have guys fall off the horse on both sides, and we want to try to middle ground. It's like one side is the guy who says, "Put it on my back." Okay, preach another 50 times this year because of all this stuff. Like, no problem. And they got the Superman complex, and they got a blue collar guilt gene, and
And for the most part, that's kind of a young man's game.
Yeah, I mean,
that will run out at some point.
Right. Glory of the young man is their strength. So it's like, hey, just put it on my back and that kind of thing. Of course, the other side is what you're saying is like, you stare it right in the face and you're just like, man, I don't really want to do that. I've kind of got a good deal going, and church is growing, and we're just not going to really, engage in that. And I think what we would advocate for is some kind of middle ground where you say, hey, only a fool sort of adds a bunch of things onto their plate, doesn't take anything else off, and doesn't think something's going to break.
Right.
I mean, that's just like foolish. I mean, like I'm saying, like you see the sky's red, there's a storm coming. We would try to do that. I would say we actually did try to do that. I mean, we tried to take things off of me, and I'm glad we had a directional team that really wanted to protect me and that stuff. It still wasn't quite enough, probably. So I would just say, man, I think when we coach guys on this, we try to tell them, you need to preach drastically less this year if you're going to be a senior communicator, if you're doing all the rest of this stuff. Whoever the you is in the situation, they probably need to take enough things off where at least half of their job can be just devoted to this. Probably needs to be more. A lot of churches that are bigger than our church, they just have a full-time person. This is what they do if they're going to, if they're going to go into one of these things. So, I just think the biggest thing for me is just, man, see it for what it is and respond appropriately. It is going to kick your butt. So, you got to just know that going in.
Yep.
All right. Fourth thing, of 5. This is hard, man, but it's part of that emotional toll I just mentioned. Everybody is not going to make it through a generosity initiative. When you're talking about pivotal moments, huge mission opportunities, God's desire for generosity, there are going to be people in your church that grumble, complain, gossip, and leave. And what we would say is, man, as bad as it hurts and as much as we got to carry it, you just let them go. I'm not saying you don't try to talk to them or whatever, but generally speaking, man, Proverbs tells us in Proverbs 20:19, avoid somebody with a big mouth. I mean, just avoid them. I mean, Romans 16 tells us the same thing. Romans 16 says, be cautious around people who want to create division, avoid them. And I think there are two primary reasons why generosity initiatives end up bringing out that kind of worse in some people. And I want to be very clear, like in our experience, it's a very, very small minority amount of the people. I mean, almost everybody. What did we take? We took 500 people on vision retreats. Mm-hmm. And we had maybe 2 or 3 kind of grumblers that made it through, but they were kind of grumblers. And like one dissident that just left the church and were mad and everything. 500 people, and you got one person that does what I'm saying here. So it's very small, but it will happen. So you need to make sure that you see it coming.
Yep.
And I think it's for 2 reasons. The first reason is, and maybe you can speak to this, Bobby, I think that the first reason is talking about money just reveals the heart. It just gets into people in a different way. And when you stand up and you begin to talk about the spiritual input is God's generosity to you, the spiritual output is, do you steward everything in your life, and what does that mean for your giving? Man, a lot of people that are in lockstep with Christ, they love it. They want to be challenged like that. They love it, man. They're like, dude, we want to go deeper, But then there's a small handful that are like, man, you're touching too close to home here.
Yeah, I don't. So you have a second one you'll get to in a minute about alignment and stuff. Yeah. I don't think in terms of the first one, there's just a spiritual thing going on in their heart in terms of money and generosity. I don't think I've ever seen, and we've done multiple of these, and so we've had multiple of these conversations with people over the years that are having issues.
Right.
Probably more than 10 at this point. I've never seen someone that was very generous financially that had an issue in bucket 1. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, normally something is going on in their life.
Right.
They're normally something simple like giving a tithe, they're normally not in that camp. Mm-hmm. Something spiritual is happening. it could be some things I've seen. It could be something from their past. It could be, man, they were at another church. It could be they feel like somebody took advantage of them. Maybe they've grown a lot as a Christian, and man, they give their time, and they go on mission trips, and they serve like crazy, and then you just find out, man, they just have some money hang-ups in their heart. Maybe they grew up poor, and God's just never released them from wanting to hold on to the money that he's given them. And so, it's just tough though as a pastor, you know what I mean? Because I guess some guys can just take it, they could just take it, but it's just tough when you see people that you love and you respect them and you want to honor them, and then they just start going crazy as soon as you start talking about money.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's different types. I mean, some people they generally want to understand. They have questions because they have questions, but a lot of times people are questioning, and they just all of a sudden go into this like critical, hyper divisive, tearing down the pastors and just all this kind of stuff. And as sad as it is, honestly, I think some of it is just that a hit dog will holler. Like you've been talking about money, and the Spirit of God is convicting them, and they're not going to do what the Spirit's telling them to do, so this is your fault. And they're going to come out against you. The second thing, though, is, and we've seen this, I actually think there's more hope for the first maybe group a little bit in terms of just, there are people that maybe God uses this to like teach them something that they didn't understand. They had a bad understanding, then they have a good understanding. The second group, though, in terms of just, I don't mean hope as in like, I just mean in terms of them staying with your church.
Maybe it's easier to convince people in the first group.
Yeah, the second group of people are those who, and this is the way I've come to say it, man, they feel icky about the things that you feel excited about. And whenever that happens, it's just going to be a short road. It's just, there's just ministry misalignment. And so what happens is, in a generosity initiative, normally that project part and the ministry, new ministry projects part, those things are big, and they are just like on brand with who you are. And the people that are like really with you and love what you do, they freaking love it. I mean, they're like, dude, we love the regional campus. Let's triple the size of this thing, and let's do Ridge campus. Let's go, People that are not really aligned, and they got all these problems with just whatever, man. They're not bad people, but they're not on brand with you. They're not, our brand is big box sending. That's just not what they want to do. They want to do something else. They want to do small. They want to do refugee. They want to do diversity church. They want to do missional. They want the front door of the church to be groups instead of the front door being the weekend gathering, just whatever,
Right.
It becomes very hard for that person to hide anymore. Man, when the church is getting fired up and actually being called to give to the thing that we get excited about, but they actually feel icky about, man, it just makes it really hard for them to hang.
Yeah. And the thing is, here's the thing, is this is really, really good for the church, even though it doesn't feel good at the time. If there are people that are not 100% aligned, like we're not a softball team. We're talking about heaven and hell, life and death. This is what the church is. This is what we're going after. And so if people are not 100% aligned, it's really, really, really good that you find that out before you go to the next stage. And it's good for them too, because they need to find whatever church it is that they're 100% aligned to. But it's painful, Yeah. This is why you'll have people, we all know somebody like this, or maybe you are like this, where it's good if you go to the dentist and have a cavity and they remove the cavity and fix it. But then a lot of people say, well, I just don't want to go to the dentist. Right. I'd rather not know.
They make me feel bad about myself.
I'd rather not know that I have a cavity and just ignore it versus like actually deal with it. Because, I mean, if you as the pastor is doing what God wants you to do, and your heart is genuine, and you're not doing this as some slick salesman, you believe in the vision, you're going after the vision, then it's like, man, it's ultimately good that people kind of fall away because you've aligned more with the vision, or you're just more clear.
Yeah.
That's what happens in these initiatives. You're just, the pastors probably, man, are super aligned around the vision, but maybe you just don't talk about it as much. And so when you begin to really talk about it, it kind of comes to the surface. Right. And it's just good, but it's hard.
Yeah. And I mean, dude, I hate the dentist, man. I hate going to the dentist, dude. So you caught me in a headspace here. But no, I agree with what you're saying. The only thing I would say, caveat, is I have known a few people that, they do want to honor their covenant to the church and their membership, and they put relationship ahead of some of these philosophical things. Most people cannot do that. Most people just can't. They can't constantly be rubbed the wrong way by the pastor's vision and still stay at a church and not be like divisive. I have met a few people that I feel like kind of can, because they value other things way more, and they're just like, well, that's fine. I'm not going to be like divisive about it or whatever. But generally speaking, what you're saying is right, that it might just be better for those people to find something that they align with a lot more. I mean, my point is you just end up with nowhere to hide. Like if you're at Mercy Hill and secretly you really hate the fact that we have a big inviter culture on the weekend, because you believe that evangelism should be only and exclusively like one-on-one. And, it should never be like bring the person to the pastor for him to share the gospel. Like, you can't stand that. It bothers you. Then when the church decides, hey, the best thing we think we can do for the mission is triple the size of this room so more people can hear the gospel, you just are not going to be able to hide.
Right.
Like, you can't hang with that, And so I think that vision getting bigger, expanded, but also just clearer, I think it kind of exposes some people. And that's fine, man. People need, God moves people around. I mean, he's the pastor. We're all Sunday school classes. I get that. But a lot of times these people can't just say, hey, I don't know why people are like this. I have no idea why. I've analyzed it a lot, but I just don't know. I don't know why someone couldn't just say, hey, man, there's another church we think is a better fit for our family, but we love you guys and we hope the best. They cannot do that, man. Most people.
Right.
What most people have to do is they have to make themselves justified for leaving. And so then they end up turning into the gossipers and the grumblers and the complainers. And I don't really understand why people are like that, but it is just how people are. So, all right, last thing, man. The last thing we'll say is this will go quick. Praise God for any results of your generosity initiative. I just want to say this, guys. We've had opportunities to go beyond the goals that we set, and we've had opportunities to fall short of the goals that we set. In generosity initiatives, and God gave us in that the chance to glorify Him in both cases, because it was not about what we were going to do. It was always about what He was going to do. It was never in our hands. It's our best attempt to be skilled in our care of people and to try to be strategic and to try to disciple their heart and to try to get things done for the kingdom. We're doing the best we can, but ultimately it's in God's hands, and it's sort of like the feeding of the 5,000 in Matthew 14. It's less about our little loaves and fish, and it's more about what God is able to do with it. I think that sometimes when you're having success after success after success, certainly you do a generosity initiative, you crush your goals. That's awesome. We praise God, but sometimes you don't know whether you're going to that success as you're living water until you fail. And sometimes failure can be a big time blessing, where we can understand, wait a minute, this was never about me. It was never about us. It was always about God, His fame, renown, and glory, and He was going to do with it what He wanted to do. So I think it's good to praise God for the results that we have whenever generosity initiatives are concluded, no matter what happens with them. Any last word?
No, I think that's great, man. Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, hey, guys, we have a podcast. Obviously, you're listening to that, but we also have a Facebook group, and we'd love for you guys to check out our Facebook group. That Facebook group is a private opportunity for you to come in and ask questions directly around church growth and sending. So get on breakinggrowthbarriers.com to check that out. Thanks.